Welcome back to another episode of Embracing Magic, where we're on the road again. We're in St Leonard's at the ossuary in Hythe. This is an incredible Norman church from the 1100s, and it's said to have the largest remains of bodies, speculated around 4,000, with the largest collection of skulls at 1,000. So we're going to be going into the crypt, which is behind me, and we're going to be doing a tour of the space, looking at the bones and feeling the energy of the room. And then we're going to be looking at the church and the grounds and just generally having a chat afterwards about our experiences. So with all of these sorts of tours, we think it's really important to actually be able to give you a bit of a walkthrough and show you what you might be able to come and see if you're interested in doing that. So first of all, this is a beautiful Norman church, and I always really admire the lovely arched doorways. This one will be more modern because you can see that there are more modern glass panels in it opposed to the other side. And I'd imagine that this is letting in a nice bit of natural light without damaging the bones. But let's go in and see what we can see inside. So first of all, you're met with two mirrored walls of arched skulls, and they're very, very impressive, very beautiful, and also a little bit intimidating. But yeah, do come inside and have a look. We noticed when we got in here, there's a little bird's nest going on over here, which apparently has been here for a couple of years. Bird snuck in for the winter and made a very good home. Not a bad shout. Then we've got a little display here of bones. I think perhaps some rib bones over here. And these will probably be femurs. This looks like a lot of femurs to me. A lot of leg bones, a lot of maybe arms as well. We've got a whole stack of jaws going on here. Maybe some broken pelvises. Oh no, these are jaws as well. You can see because of the teeth marks. And then as we go through, this I found really interesting because you don't normally see skulls from this side up. And, you know, it just makes you realise that big, long cord that goes down from your spine into the brain and operates everything. Definitely is making me feel very mortal right now. But it's interesting to see it from this side. It's almost giving me a bit of a Matrix feeling, you know, like you're plugged into the electricity. And then we have a few more jaws as well. Here we go, our two femurs from the legs. And this one is a femur that has osteomyelitis, which is an infection in the bone, and you can see because of the holes. That would have been very painful, I'm sure. But it's quite wild to see such a massive stack of limbs. And some of the bones are quite noticeably smaller than other ones, which would suggest that they are children's bones, which is always really sad to see. But given that this church is from the 1200s, it's not surprising to think that some of these children would have lost their lives quite soon due to sickness. There was a little bit of speculation that some of the bones from here were because of the Black Plague, but I think that's probably not true, having spoken to someone that works here. And then this is where the energy starts to feel quite a bit colder. And I'm not really sure why, because it's completely the same structure as the other side. I guess there's maybe just like a little bit less light coming through because this is the older side. This is the old original door. But yes, two more mirrored rows and rows of human skulls, all in different conditions. Like I said, some of them have damage to the skulls. It's very difficult to know whether there's damage to them because of battle. You can see there's one down here that's like half missing. But also, bones need to be taken care of in a very, very particular way in order to not degrade, and they're really fragile, so it's very easy for them to decompose if they're not, you know, taken care of properly. You know, a lot of people beeswax skulls now to ensure that they stay in really good condition. And they, you know, there used to be a lot of people used to boil them in order to kind of like clean them and everything, which is actually really bad for the bone. And I think that the method now is like hydrogen peroxide. So I don't know how these have been treated, but they are definitely in varying states of condition. We don't know anything about these people and what happened to them. But here they are, like a piece of interior design. This feels like a very interesting way of honouring them. and something quite intrinsic to our culture, I guess. But it's beautiful, beautiful and sad. All of the skulls have been numbered. I think they've all been traced to see what their cultural background is. But they're still in a very fragile state, as bones are. You know, bones are elemental. I like to think of them as being like the stones of the body. But they also obviously step into that element of spirit as well. As you probably can imagine, bones are very important to my spiritual practice, and I thought maybe I'd share a few ways in which they're used. But personally, I am only happy to have bones in my collection that I've found myself. I don't go out to someone that sources them. I don't pay for them. I wait until they find me, and I also try and make sure whether I feel like it's okay to take them. So I might ask if it's okay to take them. I had a really good conversation with a friend recently where we discussed this, and we basically agreed that if a bone is missing from the rest of its skeleton, then it feels like it's okay to take that and honour it as part of your practice. But if there's a whole skeleton there, it feels like right that you should leave it. You know, there's a lot of ethics around when it's okay to use bones and when it's not. A lot of people that do ancestral work or like ancestral veneration will have them on an altar, and they will, you know, have candles and photos of their ancestors, and the bones will be like that really grounding reminder of the, you know, the mortal body. They also can be really helpful for connecting with spirit guides and ancestors, and, you know, doing lucid dream work. And also, if you go into some other cultures, like in voodoo or hoodoo, people use a lot of bone throwing, which is a divination practice where you have a set of bones, not unlike a rune set, and you'll cast the bones onto the ground and you'll ask questions. But I think what's really important is to respect the fact that they were part of the human body and they aren't just an object. So it is really important that we look after them and recognise where they've come from and the memory that they hold. Having spoken to someone that works here, it doesn't seem as though the people that did die in battle or from the Black Plague, they were just moved in here after the burial ground outside was used to extend the Norman church. So yes, there's been a lot of stories going on here, but it does seem like they've been honoured and respected in quite a beautiful way that people can come in and visit them. This is obviously just the crypt, and there's actually a stunning church upstairs, so we're going to take you upstairs and we're going to go and do a little tour of that area too. St. Leonard's Church is stunning. It's a peaceful, light-filled space that contrasts the weight of the crypt below. And the stained glass windows, they do that lovely thing where they throw soft colour across the room. And there's something still about it, like the air is holding its breath. And the one thing that I found really moving were the carved memorials and the plaques, many of them from the 18th and 19th centuries. And they line the walls and they speak of the lives that were lived, the loves that were lost, and a deep reverence for death and memory that just runs through the whole place. The church itself, it feels like it's held hundreds of years of quiet prayers, of grief and of hope. And there are just small details everywhere, the worn edges of the pews and the smooth stone beneath your feet, that just makes you realise how many people have passed through, carrying their own stories. And I think it's really important to acknowledge how places like this, they hold energy, not just from the people who are buried here, but from the living who continue to visit and honour them. It's like the church above is the breath and the crypt below is the bones, two parts of the same body, but holding memory in very different ways. Just gathering my thoughts after going inside of the crypt. I think I was a little bit apprehensive to go in because the last time that I went to a crypt, it was in Salzburg, and I had a really big impending feeling of doom and just feeling like everything was very close, you know, when the air feels almost like thick and electric, and it just didn't feel right in there. And I was a little bit concerned it was going to be the same today. I didn't necessarily get that feeling. It felt relatively peaceful, but what I will say is I'm having some mixed feelings about the idea of having taken all these bones out of their graves and then planting them in this crypt in order to extend the church. It just doesn't really feel that respectful to me. I mean, obviously I don't know the reasons for why the church was extended. It might be that the local population was growing and they needed a bigger space to worship, but it just feels to me that like once bones are in the ground, we should leave them there. So yeah, I think I'm having some not very good feelings about that choice. I think I'm very much of the mindset that we shouldn't develop areas that are places for bones to rest where they're supposed to stay for the rest of eternity. And, you know, I wonder if there's a little bit of unrest and stagnant energy in that space. It certainly feels strange just seeing bodies piled upon each other, you know. That said, I'm sure lots and lots of people come to view the crypt and they come to honour those bones. And, you know, there was a lovely welcome book in there where people were making lovely comments about how beautiful it was kept and how intriguing and interesting they found it and peaceful they found it in there. There definitely is a sense of peace in this space. Like this outside graveyard is gorgeous. You know, we found a lot of lovely like clary sage growing. There's loads of wild poppies and, you know, it's on a hill, so there's lovely breeze from the sea. But yeah, I'm just having very mixed thoughts about it, I guess. I've just been sort of like thinking about why it's important to visit spaces like this, and I think that it's very important to hold the memory of those that have passed away and been laid to rest here. But also, you know, churches are spaces of historical significance, not just for like the more recent history in terms of the last couple of hundred of years. You know, this is a place where people came to worship their God, their deity. You know, came together as a community to experience life together and to go through the struggles and the dreams together. But, you know, generally, when we go to spaces like this, they used to be pagan sacred sites before they were Christian sites. So for instance, the fact that we're stood in front of a big elm tree, the elm tree was often, you know, thriving in an area that was of important witchcraft or pagan significance. And what they did in England to stamp out paganism is they built churches just like this one. So, you know, this is the more recent history, which obviously would have held loads of meaning for people since the 1200s, but predating that, this would have been relevant to witchcraft too. So, you know, I think it's important to come here and experience the history energetically, but also physically through what's been built. You can see this beautiful Norman building has been built, but the elm tree still resides. But also to just look at the gravestones. These are a lot of these are Victorian, you know, from the 1800s, and just to see how they've been memorialized by their loved ones. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Embracing Magic. We've been here at St Leonard's in Hythe. It is £5 to get into the crypt here, and it's free to get into the church. It's a beautiful space to come and take a look at. Bones and, you know, spirit connection are really important to my practice as a death witch, and I'd love to talk to you about bone magic if that's something that you're interested in. So let us know in the comments, and liking and subscribing will help us get out to some more exciting places. We hope to see you soon.